Good afternoon, everybody.
Hi. How you doing?
Doing well. How are you, Eric?
Doing all right.
Yeah, all right.
Doing all right.
First of all, this is really cool to look out. So I'm not a native Portlander. I've moved here in 2013 from Philadelphia. And what has been really cool in being in this industry for the last 8 years is getting to know people all around Portland. I spent 5 years at Nike, where you're inside the berm most of the time and don't get to see a lot of people around Portland. And since the time we started BALA Footwear, it's been really cool to get to see the way this community sticks together and how we're all a reflection of the skills that we all bring. So thanks to everyone who's here. I can see a few faces out here that have contributed to where we've gotten. So thanks to everybody for being here. And thanks to Mitch for getting everybody together.
Yeah, Mitch was an early introduction to BALA in general, and just really, it was a question where we were asking, how do we start making money to make shoes when we start this business? And he said, your story sounds really similar to another brand. And I was like, oh no, that's not the way I want to start this. And then he introduced us to BALA, and it was a great introduction because it was a really similar path in a very different way. And very similarly, it was that I moved here in 2012 to work for the other side, on the Adidas side. And so it was really interesting to, again, come from Vans in Los Angeles. I was born in Arizona, so again, not native, but have moved my way up the coast, or up the West Coast, all the way here. And when we got here, it was really amazing to see the community of starters, builders, people trying to do things on their own. And it was an immediate opportunity for my wife, Samantha, who runs Studio Noise, where she started a footwear agency in the footwear capital of the world, because she didn't want to work for Adidas or Nike at the time. And so after 5 years with Adidas, I went to work with her, and we got to work with all kinds of brands, big and small. And one of the things that we saw that was missing when people came to us with ideas was the food and beverage industry was being ignored. So we saw safety boots, we saw hunting boots, we saw basketball, running, tennis, we saw all the things that Nike and Adidas do in the backyard. But then there was the same thing that I'm sure you saw in an opportunity that was just missing.
Yeah, for sure. But why don't we start off and share a little bit about our companies and our products?
Yeah, go for it.
All right. Well, so again, like I said, my name is Brian Lockard. I'm the co-founder of BALA Footwear. And we make performance footwear designed specifically for nurses. And I think and we're here to talk about designing a product or building a company in service of a niche community. And I think what's most interesting about Eric and myself and my co-founder John is that none of us are the consumer that we are working in service of. I am not a nurse. My co-founder John is not a nurse. And a lot of companies are started by people who are from that community and then learn how to make a product that solves a problem that they had. And that's not us. When we started exploring the healthcare market, and more specifically nursing footwear in 2019, we took a little bit of a contrarian approach in that we just set a goal to talk to as many nurses as we could for the remainder of the year. And so we actually started off not too far from here over at Cooper's Hall. We would have happy hours on Tuesday nights. And you can get a lot of people to join you for focus groups if you offer wine from Cooper's Hall, if anybody's looking to do focus groups post-pandemic. And then, we just kept listening, and by the end of the year, we had interviewed between 400 and 500 nurses. And that was here in Portland. That summer, John's mom wasn't doing so well, so he was flying to Denver all the time to take her to the hospital, and so he would always have a focus group, in the hospital. I had an interesting, opportunity to observe nurses for an entire afternoon. I'm a rock climber, and that summer, a friend of mine had a pretty bad accident, sliced his leg open, and had to drive him out to the ER in Hood River. And I gained this really unique insight in that, this is a bad injury, and he was really shaken up pretty badly. And we take him into the ER, and the nurse walks in, and she looks at him, and she says, you got a pretty bad injury there, but we're gonna take care of you and get you out of here. And I was watching like a hawk because I'm in the middle of a summer of focus groups, and now I've got a front row seat. What was so interesting that led to a lot of the insights that we built our business around was that what she did in that moment was, in a few phrases, was understand the pain that he was going through, calm him down, and then give him the confidence to give him the confidence that he was going to get out of there okay. And it set up the rest of the care team for a successful rest of the afternoon. The next person who came in cleaned up the cut, and he was calm, and he was an easy patient to deal with. Then the doctor came in and stitched him up. And it was all because of this one moment that the nurse did to set everyone else up for success. And if I wasn't watching so closely, I probably would have missed that. And what we learned from that was that in so many cases, what the nurse does for the care team and for the patient is misunderstood, and it's overlooked. And what that showed us was that we would need to go above and beyond to listen at every stage of the company and to involve the nurse at every step of the product design and development, how we built out the brand, how we market it, et cetera, et cetera. And I think that what we did was turn our inexperience in the market into an advantage, because we had to show up with an open mind at every step. I often share that I started my career as a journalist, not in footwear. And what you do in that career is you show up in situations where you don't know anything. You do all the research you can, you ask the right questions with an open mind, and then you synthesize it into a clear story that helps your reader understand the world a little bit better. And in serving a niche community that you are not a part of, you show up, ask the consumer questions, bring the expertise that you have and that the people that you've brought together to work in this company have, and try to make something a little bit better for them. And then bring them along and try to make it a little bit better again, and do it over and over and over again until hopefully you've got a successful company that's making your customers' life a little bit better. And it's worked out, really well. We incorporated our company in at the end of 2019. We moved into our first office, actually right up the street off Sandy. We were subleasing a conference room from North Avenue Education that tutors high school students on the SAT. And then we moved out because of COVID. And in the year that followed, we finalized a design for our product. We tested it with a cohort of 50 nurses all over the country, got their feedback, finished it. We held a pre-sale in September of 2020, where our goal was just to sell 500 pairs to prove to a group of investors that there was willingness to buy in the market. And we sold 7,700 pairs in 12 days, direct to consumer, for a little over $1 million in revenue. And since then, we've sold 40,000 pairs. And the product continues to get better because of the way that we seek to listen. So this is our product, BALA 12s. And there's little differences in every single batch that we order from our factory, because we just seek to do what we did when we first started the company, which is ask the consumer, how the product is performing, ask them what they need better, and then try to make it a little bit better. Love to hear your story, Erik.
Yeah, no, it's great to hear this, because we're a few steps back and behind this process. So for us, very similarly, around 2019, just an off season with some of the things at the consultancy, we took some time to really look at what those opportunity gaps we saw were. And throughout my career, even through the time at Vans, had friends in the food and business industry that were just like, I love Vans, but they're not great for the kitchen. But they look great, they feel cool. I feel comfortable going out for drinks afterwards, hanging out with my friends, but I slip, I fall on my butt. I can't have my whole crew wearing them and falling on their asses too. Like, honestly, this is dangerous. And then, so the more and more we started to look around in 2019, going, excuses to go out to dinner, sit at the bar, look in the open, excuse me, in the open kitchens, and seeing what people are wearing, what they're doing, how they're working, the movements, the performance, the quickness, the tightness of those teams running around together is very performance oriented. And so looking at what we do for running, for tennis, for basketball, for hunting, for military, and bringing some of those features together to figure out what we could do for those people. And so in 2020, we started doing surveys, and at that point, COVID hit. And so we really couldn't go out and find people, talk to people openly. So I started our MISE Footwear Instagram. and I just started DMing every restaurant I could in Portland and just asking who was running this. And more often than not, it was the chefs, it was the restaurateurs, it was the people that were owning these businesses that had to shrink down their businesses to just them or just 1 or 2 people to have this skeleton crew. And so in seeing how impactful COVID was hitting this industry and that the government in the US especially wasn't doing a lot to help them, it really made us double down that we really want to do something. And so if we can keep these people on their feet and healthy in a way through our craft to help them do their craft, and in turn continue the service and the hospitality that they offer that gives people these moments to spend with friends, with family. Once there's that chance for the industry to bounce back, we want to be a part of it. And so over the past year and a half now, we had over 500 people sign up for our wear test program, and our goal similarly was to get samples on people's feet so we could get real world feedback. And so from those 500 people nationwide, we picked 160 people, and that includes around 90 people from Portland. So if you were to name any restaurant in town, there's probably somebody that either is going to be wearing them in the next month or knows somebody that'll be wearing them, and then 50 to 60 other people around the country. And this includes Top Chef competitors, it includes James Beard Award winners and nominees, it includes Michelin star chefs. We've run the gamut to try and get people at any size, any scale, all the way down to, you know, the smallest startup kitchen, the same way that we're trying to start up. We want to support everybody at every scale because everyone matters in the community, and we've loved that about Portland. So we're at that point where for us, we're just getting our samples. We've bootstrapped to this point, and now it's really putting our money where our mouth is and putting shoes on people's feet so that we can get real feedback and they can tell us what they love and what they hate and really figure out what that next step is for us.
Yeah, I'm curious. You know, I mentioned before that both of us are not the consumer that we're designing and servicing. Tell me about how you go about building relationships with people in your consumer category.
Going out to restaurants, getting food. I mean, that was a big thing. As the passion that I had originally was just, I love food. Having worked at Vans and Adidas, I met some of my favorite celebrity skaters, people that were athletes that I've always geeked out on. And I realized that it was so much easier to talk to them one-on-one than it was to go to a restaurant and ask to talk to the chef or somebody that made my food, because that made so much more of an impression on me for some reason. And it seems so weird to think I could talk to a James Harden that had just signed a 13-year, $200 million contract and be able to talk to him about a game like it was nothing, but then have no clue how to ask how, you know, Gabriel Rucker cooked my duck confit. And I was just like, it made me feel so different that I wanted to figure out a way to honor that person wherever they were. And so it really was reaching out in any way, going to a restaurant and staying a little bit later so that it was a little bit quieter to be able to talk to somebody. Or honestly, Instagram was amazing. It was really crazy to see how many people would reach out. And when I'd say, thank you for an amazing meal, somebody would come back and say, much appreciated. And that's as simple as it was.
That's fantastic.
How about you? I mean, obviously you gave the one case with your friend in the hospital, but to get, you know, 500 people to do your survey is obviously a bigger task.
Yeah, earlier, Jelani mentioned that, Instagram, can be really harmful to young people. And, I've found that social media in early stage businesses can be such a blessing and such a curse, because you can reach people in such incredible scale in ways that we couldn't 20 years ago. 20 years ago, you had to travel around the country with a van, meeting people and getting them to put shoes on feet and building relationships. And, at first glance, that seems like something that's like not scalable. So early on, I mentioned we spoke with, between 400 and 500 nurses around the country. And, we connected with people who were regular nurses working on floors. We connected with people who were the influential nurse, on the floor. And we also connected with people who were social media influencers and had built up, audiences. And, our goal was always to, bring these nurses into the process that we use to co-create products with them. And if they had an audience, bring that in as well. And, so one of the things we did, early on is, we worked with one social media influencer in particular, and we created a separate Instagram community called BALA Insiders, which was a separate non-commercial, page where, we would ask for feedback on product. And it was shocking the number of people we could get to sign up in a short time to join this page. We had something like, I think it was 4,600 people that we were gathering feedback from, which was amazing to just be able to put up an Instagram story and get feedback about colorways from 2,500 people at any given moment. And that was amazing. It gave us the incredible opportunity to show these people that we were listening to them, and it provided the opportunity to get really statistically significant data by number, by volume in a short time. And what we found is, we ended up having just strategic differences with the social media influencer, and that relationship, went south, and that was incredibly sad. And what we found was that we lost that community because a lot of the people who had joined that community were there because of that influencer, and those relationships weren't real. They were social media, which I can't stress enough. Social media is not the real world. And so that was a really difficult period. It was our first true inflection point as a company where 4,000 people said, I don't want anything to do with you anymore. And what was real was the people who we had spoken to, like the individuals at OHS. My friend Amy Paul Adams, who's been a nurse at OHSU for 10 years, who said, Brian, I've seen some concerning things on Instagram. I want to know what happened, but I also have heard and seen the ways that you guys have been of service to this community in the last 2 years. And what we found was that the people who we had built real personal relationships with, it wasn't scalable, it wasn't a big number that people care about and I can brag about in a meeting like this, but they were real relationships and they're real people who gave us really good feedback, and our team built emotional connections with and worked every day in service of. So to answer your question is, we've looked at a lot of different ways to build relationships, and there's all sorts of tools available. I mean, some companies have used Slack channels incredibly effectively, or, direct email chains. And what we've found is that, we have a full-time employee who graduated college this May, and she joined us as an intern a year before. And I'd share her name, but she's too talented. I don't want anybody in this room poaching her. And her full-time job is just to go have conversations with nurses, and not just to ask about, how are your BALA 12s performing? What do you want better out of your existing shoes? But tell me about your life. How are things going? You're on the front lines of a pandemic now, but we've heard that your life was really hard before. That's one of the big things that we've heard from nurses, is that we didn't need a pandemic for our lives to be hard. It was hard before, it'll be hard after. COVID-19 just exacerbated existing issues. And we've heard that consistently. So, as one little plug, one thing, we seek to listen to nurses and hear what's going on, and in some small way seek to help them beyond footwear. And one of the overwhelming things that we've heard is simple thank yous go a long way. So, we've been doing this for 2 years, and one of the most fun things is that everybody seems to know a nurse. So I'm sure a few of you in this room have friends, parents, siblings who are nurses, and give them a call and just ask them how they're doing. And then at the end, just say thank you, because they're going through a lot right now, and it hasn't just been the last 18 months, it's been their whole careers.
It's true, and it's such an interesting parallel, again, at such different ranges of what those career paths are with the food and beverage industry. Obviously, when we started putting together our fact sheets and our numbers for the US specifically, pre-COVID, it was 15.6 million people in the industry. During COVID, it got down to, I believe, just over 9 million. That was the impact within 1 year of what that industry had. And within that bounce back, quote unquote, bounce back that we're feeling right now, it's gone back up to close to 12 million again. But you still hear all the issues with trying to find talent, how quickly the turnover is, how hard it is to retain people, because the industry has its problems in all sorts of ways. It's underpaid. There's really hairline margins on everything. And with supply chain issues that we're feeling on the footwear side, we're seeing at every restaurant we go to saying that they don't have something, that their staff is gone, that they didn't show up that day. And so for us, in the same manner, we want to figure out ways to support beyond just keeping people on their feet with foot health and stability in a physical manner, but also looking at what our brand can do to be a voice, to listen, and to also care for them in different ways. And so we're looking at doing a portion of profit type of mentality where we look at what we can do per pair to give back to foundations. And this is actually based on Lardo here. We love what Rick and the team at Lardo does with their chef witches. And so collaborating with the chef, monthly, to be able to have them do something special as a collaboration and then give back a portion of the proceeds to a foundation of that chef's choice. And so we want to look at what those types of opportunities are when we scale that up to what footwear is, where there is a little bit better margin, where there is the opportunity to scale beyond just one restaurant, but to, multiple hospitality groups, to restaurant change, and what business to business means, because we know as much as we love the grassroots, the scalability is an opportunity to have that voice and that reason to be bigger for us and for everyone in the industry.
I hadn't thought about both of our customers having been through a particularly difficult period because of COVID.
It's been a crazy year in both industries, really.
How have you taken that into account in discussions that you've had? I mean, you've been talking with people who have lost their jobs, lost their restaurants.
Yeah, one of the first people that we presented our deck to was Sean and Jamie King, who had just moved from Momofuku, Vegas, being the executive chef there and one of the top bartenders in the country. They came to open up Bar King, and their first 2 weeks opening were the first 2 weeks of March 2020. And so they immediately shut down, and our first meeting with them was in their empty restaurant, and we talked with them for 4 hours. They were so happy to just be able to talk. And the first thing that Sean saw on our computer screen was the word MISE.pdf, and he laughed and he shook his head, and then he pulled up his sleeve and he had a tattoo that said Mise en place. And I was like, we got it. We understand. Like, if you know what Mise is, you understand what we're doing for you. And so we talked for 4 hours about that. And thank you for pronouncing it right and knowing what it's from. But it's gone that way with everybody. When we talk to partners, opportunities, people that are in the industry but maybe are just there because it's a job, you can tell the difference when they know what mise en place means, because it's such a meaningful thing from top to bottom, left to right. It's the structure of everything. And so when we started to talk to people like Sean and Jamie, they were just so appreciative of what we were trying to do. And it was so meaningful to hear them. And so almost weekly, I try and get myself as well as other team members on the team to go and reach out to somebody locally, because it has been so easy, unfortunately, to be able to reach out to somebody that may have to have a day off because the restaurant industry isn't what it was before. And so to be able to talk with them, sit with them, and give them our time, and also have them share their time, it's just been something we want to do continuously for as long as we have this business, to be able to have that real world one-on-one experience and have those conversations that aren't just emails or phone calls or text messages. So it's been really putting that effort out to say, hey, we're available, we want to talk, not just about shoes, but what are the other pain points that have nothing to do with your feet or your day, just what is your life like?
You know, by focusing so closely on a niche consumer group like we have, one of the most exciting things to me is finding these nuggets of insight that people who don't spend as much time with our customers do. I'm curious, what are some things that people misunderstand about what it's like to be a chef?
How easy it is. I think as much as everybody says they cook at home, when you look at what a real meal is to how many people on a turn, how many people during a 12-hour shift, and how to manage a team and that level of meticulousness, it's so difficult to see. And then for you to go home and say that was pretty good, or this part was cold, and know that they can get a response on Yelp that says 1 star immediately and ruin their whole business day, it's amazing. And so that was one thing that we're joking about, is we're waiting, it's their turn to review us. And so we're about to give 150 people shoes that can be the ultimate critics for us to just come at us and give us that type of feedback. And we don't want 5-star reviews. We don't want it to be a sweeping high five that we did something cool because we focused on them. We want to know when something wasn't working, when it caused problems, when it wasn't up to their standards, because everybody does it to them. The reviews, it's so hard. It's just an expectation that this hospitality happens because food seems so easy, and it's something that is expected daily, 3 times a day. So it's really interesting to have that, and I'm curious because it is like, you know, on your side, people usually go when it's something of a major issue or something that they've looked up on, you know, WebMD and think they know exactly what the problem is. I'm curious how that goes on your side.
Yeah, the best way I could characterize what it's like to be a nurse in particular is like, just for a moment, like whatever your business in this room is, we've all had days where people we're working with, it's a really bad day for them. Now imagine it's the worst day of their life and you're dealing with another person every day who it's the worst day of their life. I mean, like, just sit with that for a second and imagine how hard that is. Like, literally every single day you work, you're working in service of somebody who's experiencing the worst day of their life. And it's gotta be hard. Like, you know, I've thought about that a lot, and I try to have empathy for our consumer, for nurses that we work to serve. And I still can't, like, I work on that to try to figure out what is that like. And the way they show up is fantastic. I mean, so I was just, we had the opportunity to make a donation to Cheyenne Regional Medical Center in Wyoming. There was a guy named Robert Vines out there who had a breakthrough case of COVID. He had been vaccinated and just was immunocompromised. And when he, so he had a bad case. He was intubated for 3 weeks and in a coma. And when he came to, he was hallucinating. And he goes, Brian, I was so scared because I woke up, had no idea where I was. People were walking around in like their COVID spacesuits, and I was scared. And this nurse, you know, sat down, you know, next to me and just held my hand, you know, for 30 minutes, and it meant the world to me. And then, so if you switch things around, so at that, I spoke with the hospital CEO that day after we made the donation. And you know, he said one of the biggest challenges there is that this is one of the hospitals, they're getting picketed for not offering ivermectin or whatever the drug is. So literally their nurses are being protested by people in the community. And you know, this CNA had the ability to put all that aside and just sit with this man who she didn't know was a breakthrough case. She didn't know that he had done everything right. She could have assumed that he was just somebody who didn't do what she thought he should do. But she sat with him and made a world of difference. And, you know, so when I think about that, like, I honestly don't know if that's something that, like, I'm capable of. You know, I don't know if I could do that. So anyway, like, to get to the point, like, literally what they go through every single day is working with people who are experiencing the worst day of their life. And I can't even begin to imagine what that's like, but it's motivating to try to work, you know, in their service. You know, I don't really have much more to say about that. It's just, it's got to be really hard.
It really is. I mean, it's service, really. Service and hospitality are things that are really hard to do when you're having a bad day. Mm-hmm. And to think that's somebody's job to do it in and out blindly on both sides of this table is incredible. Mm-hmm. And, you know, to feed somebody one day and to build them back up and, you know, fix them in so different ways. Like, it's so similar yet so different, but both of them are so necessary in our day to day.
Yeah, you know, it's you made me think when you mentioned that, you know, like one thing going wrong is a bad Yelp review away. And you know, I mentioned before how like social media is not like the real world. I think oftentimes, you know, we look at all the ways that that our lives are better because of different tools. Like, Yelp is awesome. I can just sit down and know, like, okay, there's a 5-star food truck like right over there that I'm going to in an hour. That's great. And the ways in which it makes things better for us, there could be a human on, you know, the other side, you know, of that. You know, you're the people that you serve, working under that weight of every dish that goes out potentially being a 1-star review. Like, nurses, I'm pretty sure that like hospitals are on Yelp. And I think it's a good thing for all of us to remember is that there's always a human on the other side of that interaction, no matter what it is.